You found us through fly fishing. You'll stay for our passion and the community. Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing podcast.
Yeah, but he doesn't get it. How come fly fishermen don't get it?
You only haul with the short power snap.
Look for where people walk and the insides of bends and hunt those.
The roof blew off and the interior walls got sucked out and the trees are just coming up. And I mean, he's clearly not going to clear the trees.
It is not a fly fishing story. It's a story about me trying to understand my brother through fly fishing.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Today's episode is sponsored by Daiichi Fishing Hooks, a leader in the fly fishing industry and still the world's sharpest hook. Tempered with carbon-rich steel, Daiichi offers superior penetration without compromising the hook's structural integrity. You can head over right now to wetflyswing.com/Daiichi and check out what they have going and check out these killer hooks. That's Daiichi, Daiichi. We've been waiting for you. Follow our guests, follow us on Instagram, and share this episode and the love if you enjoy this podcast. And we are live in 3, 2, 1. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good. Now, do you go by Josh or Joshua?
Either works for me.
Okay, good. So we're going to dig into Travel Creel, which is I'm really interested in because we've been on a travel kind of process and creating trips, and I know how challenging they could be. So I'm interested to hear what you have going because I think you have something pretty unique. And we're going to talk about, and also the trips, because you guys are traveling around the world, it looks like, doing some great stuff. So before we get there, let's break it back real quick into fly fishing. How did you first get into it, and what's your first memory there?
Well, I got into fishing at a really young age. My grandmother used to take me to the pier on Long Island. I grew up on the East Coast, and it was kind of her way of babysitting me. She would set me up with a rod and reel and a bucket full of bait, and I would catch flounder off the pier while she knitted and did whatever she was doing, and she didn't have to take care of me for the day. I was so interested that it kind of became like our little babysitter trick. And so, I mean, that's how I started into fishing. And then I always had a passion for fishing, but I didn't actually pick up a fly rod until I was in my 20s. And that came about, the first place I ever fished with a fly rod was up at Hat Creek in California, Northern California, up by Mount Shasta. I had a friend who invited me to go up there, and not knowing anything about fly fishing, I showed up with neoprene waders and my spin rod and a bunch of spoons. And he was like, "Oh no, this is not happening." He had a friend who had extra waders and extra gear, and they kind of outfitted me and taught me the ropes. And on that trip, I caught my first rainbow trout on a dry fly, and that was it for me. I was hooked. On the way home, I bought my first outfit, pair of waders, some boots, and I overdrew my account, but I really didn't care.
Right. You got it all.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And so are you in California now, or where is your home base?
Yeah. So I live in Sonoma County, which is Northern California, north of San Francisco. And I run right now, where I'm sitting right now is on the Fall River, which is kind of in the same zone where I started. I have a group of anglers out on the water right now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, good. So the Travel Creel, let's hear how that came to be. Was that an idea that's more recent, or did you always have this idea of creating, and maybe talk about what it is and how it's different?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Travel Creel came about like from various different experiences in my life. But, when I got married and had our first kid, my wife basically told me I couldn't fish as much. And I proposed the idea of guiding, making money. And she was like, "That's fine." And that was kind of how I kept on the water, was taking people out. I had a drift boat, and I would take people out and do trout trips, bass fishing. And that led to guiding for steelhead. And the whole premise, as a chef, trained as a chef, guiding and being a chef was a really easy transition. And because guiding and being a chef kind of have the same premise behind them, as if you're guiding someone, you're fishing through them. And when you're a chef and you have a staff working for you, you're cooking through them. So there's a lot of direction giving. And as far as guest hospitality, guest retention, it's a lot of setting expectations, presentation, creating relationships with people. So going from being a chef and working in the kitchen and running a kitchen to running a drift boat and having clients in the drift boat and creating, setting expectations and creating an experience was a pretty easy transition for me. And it kind of got to the point where I really realized I enjoyed both. And I was like, how do I combine both these into one career? And when I first started guiding for steelhead, steelhead is one of those fish that, you go fishing for them and they're either there or they're not. So, the chances of catching a steelhead, you never know what they are in the beginning of the day. But I used to always guarantee to my clients that they would have a great lunch. And that really brought about a lot of people that fished with me that, word of mouth spread about that. And people knew that I created these awesome lunches on the river. And I created a client base that, was enthused by just hanging out with me and having a good time. And every once in a while, we'd hook an awesome steelhead, And,
Yep.
Sometimes it was more than every once in a while, but like that was a bonus. And the experience of being on the water together and hanging out and having a great meal became, the experience that they looked forward to having.
Right.
That led to Travel Creel and like some different paths. I have a friend that has an outfitter and he asked me to go on a travel trip with him and do some cooking, and I get to go fishing for free. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Sounds good. And I did that for a couple years, and it was a scramble because I'd fish all day and then come back to the lodge and have to put dinner up.
How hard is that?
Dude, I would literally be running around trying to get everything together while everyone was hovering over me like, how's it going? Like, what's for dinner? And I'm like, just leave me alone. I'm trying to get this done. But, that taught me a lesson about how much hospitality meant to me, where I came back to, that experience. And basically the next year where we were planning the trip, I was like, I can't fish. If I'm going to take care of people the way I want to take care of people, I can't fish during the day. I can definitely come early and fish. I can stay later and fish. But while guests are on the water, for me to give them the kind of experience I want to give them, I can't be going out there. And, that's kind of where I headed with it. And, it went much better when I wasn't fishing. I missed being out on the water with everybody, but at the same time, I really enjoyed giving them a better experience. And then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, my job at the time was working at a winery in the Napa Valley. And I was put on unemployment for the first time in my entire career as a chef. And I have a family. I got 3 kids. Well, at the time I had 2. Now I have 3. I got a couple houses with mortgages, car payments, just like everyone else does out there. And it scared me to be put on unemployment. And I realized I needed to do something different to support my family and rely on myself. I didn't feel like this was a reliable income. And none of us really knew what was happening or going to happen with COVID. And I started kind of, planning this idea of doing a travel trip once travel started coming back, and really kind of diving into doing these kind of trips I've been doing, but doing them on my own. And, that came about as travel came back. Planned my first steelhead trip to Oregon with a group of 8 guys. And it was kind of like, let's try this and see how it goes. Rented a beautiful house in Pacific City on the Oregon coast. Called some friends who I'd met up in that area who were fishing guides, and Jesse Vassar and the crew of awesome dudes he put together, awesome guides. And we took these guys fishing for 4 days, and I took care of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it was a huge success. These guys wanted to do another trip. I knew it was something, we had something going there. So, the whole thing about travel and fishing, I had done some travel trips before I even got into, doing these trips and cooking on them, is that what I noticed from the hospitality aspect is, the focus was on the fishing, which is, I get it. And the focus should be on fishing, but the hospitality kind of fell to the wayside. And when you do these travel trips, you can't guarantee you're going to have a great day of fishing. There's no guarantee. There's no control there. But what you can control is you can control the hospitality, and you can control, what kind of house it is and what kind of bed people are sleeping in. So if you do have those days where you get blown off the water or the fish just aren't into what's going on, that you can always count on coming back to a great spot and having a great meal and hanging out with great people. And that's kind of hitting the reset button. So the next day you're fresh to go again. So, and then you have those days where the fishing's epic and you have an epic meal and a great time with everyone around you, and it's a home run.
Yeah. Right. That's great. Yeah. I think we've been doing some of these similar trips too. And I've been finding the same thing, that having a chef, having that thing dialed in is a huge part of it for the reasons you just mentioned. So, that's really cool. What is, you mentioned lunches. So what is, what's your typical kind of, you hear about these guide lunches, but what's a good epic lunch you would have out there?
I just, like last year, I did a video with Loon Outdoors where we talked about what are you going to do what can you cook on the river that people can relate to, that is just a great lunch. And to me, on a cold day on the river, the best thing to eat is a hot grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. I mean, simple and perfect, and texturally perfect, and out there with listening to the river flowing and the wind blowing through the trees and eating a hot grilled cheese sandwich. There's just nothing like it. Yeah. I mean, I've gone super fancy with my lunches too. Like, I've seared foie gras on the side of the river and, served the bottle of Sauterne with some kind of, fancy clients of mine. But I still, I go back to that hot grilled cheese sandwich, crispy on the outside and creamy on the inside with some good tomato soup. I mean, it's just nothing beats it. That
is pretty good. Yeah. That's actually one of my favorites. And what was that? What was the grilled? What did you grow up with the higher clients?
Oh, foie gras, which is like fattened goose liver. It's like a luxury item. And I had a client, he's a winemaker, and he had an old vintage of like a sweeter wine. And traditionally, he was just joking with me on the phone before this trip. He's like, I got this bottle of wine. Wouldn't it be great to have some foie gras? And I was like, I actually have some. And, we were on the Trinity River that day, and we were fishing, and it was kind of rainy, and we caught a couple fish before the rain kind of really got heavy. And then we were going to do, a second part of the float, and it started raining pretty hard. And we got under like the awning of my truck, like the top part of my truck was flipped up. And I was like, let's eat some foie gras and hang out. And I seared foie gras, and we drank the wine, and, it was raining around us, and we ate it. And it was just, one of those moments that was just kind of like, who are we? What are we doing?
Wow. That is amazing. This is good. So what's the, you mentioned guiding. I mean, obviously guiding and being a chef and all that. Which one is the harder of the two?
I've had hard days at both, I mean, there's nothing worse than a day where you're trying as hard as you can to get your client into fish, and it's just not coming together for whatever reason it is, whether it's the fish's fault or the client's fault or, guide's fault. I mean, you work hard, and those days are just like, you just have this sinking feeling like, what am I going to do here to pull this off? But like having a day in the kitchen where just things just aren't going right, and every little turn, something goes wrong, and then the ticket machine starts to roll and the orders are piling up, and you're just scrambling and you just can't seem to get ahead. I mean, those are hard days too.
Right.
So both of them have their days of being hard, and both of them have their days of like, wow, that was pretty sweet. That worked out great.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, talk a little bit about, kind of where you're going now. It sounds like you've done some trips around, in the country, but I know you've done some saltwater stuff. How's that look? I know, and you're heading to Mexico, it sounds like, too, over the next kind of 6 months to a year. Do you have a bunch of trips coming up or just a few?
Yeah, so my next trip out of the country is, I've been working with these guys for a little bit now out of Baja on the Pacific side, the Los Locos Mag Bay guys, and it's marlin fishing on the fly, which is pretty darn exciting.
Wow.
And I met George kind of haphazardly and reached out to him to speak to him about his operation, and turns out that he has a little bit of a culinary background, so our conversation flowed really nice. And he was like, get your butt down here so we can meet and hang out. and went down there and caught my first marlin on the fly. And, I get off the water that day all jacked up and excited. And he's like, "You're cooking dinner for everyone tonight." And I'm like, "Great."
Right.
But me and my buddy Jimmy were down there and we pulled off a great meal. And everyone was super stoked, and we started a relationship. He's like, "When are you going to come back? Let's figure out how we're going to do this." And that really opened the traveling to foreign countries and cooking rabbit hole for me, because my thought was always like, "Well, how am I going to get my ingredients to these places, the ingredients I like to use, the base ingredients? Of course I want to use local stuff as well, but it's more than just packing your knives in your checked bag and getting there. It's there's certain things that you can't get in certain countries and certain places, and how you're going to get it there." And I worked pretty hard on sourcing things in Baja, in Mexico, through different avenues, met different people, found other people that were importers, and how do I connect with them to get things like, if I wanted to serve like really nice caviar, how do I get my caviar into a foreign country? And it's funny, through that whole journey, as it turns out, one of my friends, he's a Russian guy, and I've been buying caviar through him for a while. He's like, that it's like a international law that you're allowed to carry 500 grams of caviar on your person anywhere in the world. And I was like, I did not know that. So I can actually pack 500 grams of caviar on myself.
Oh, wow.
In a cooler.
Is that a lot? How much is that? How much is 500 grams?
500 grams is a good amount. I mean, that's, a half a kilo. That's a good amount of caviar. That's enough to, make a lot of people happy. And, I brought a tin of caviar down to San Carlos in Baja, and I think might have been the first tin of caviar, sturgeon roe caviar ever in that town. And it was great, serving caviar to not only the guests, but some of the locals who had never experienced it before.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And people can go to travelcreel.com to take a look at some of your places you're going. But talk about that. What are some other spots you're going to be heading to? Do you have? Is it mostly kind of U.S. focused stuff, or is it a mix?
I have some freshwater programs in the U.S. and some saltwater programs in the U.S. And then we just started a relationship with Caio Francis in Ambergris Cay in Belize. That's a new program. We're going to the Bahamas. We did two R&D trips there in the last year, and chose a spot in Andros with some really great folks out of a lodge down there. We're going to be working with them in January. We have a trip to Andros. We have our first inaugural trip to Oregon coming up at the end of February again for steelhead. And then back to Baja doing some rooster fishing.
Oh, nice.
On the East Cape. That's kind of the springtime thing. And then we also have, which one of my favorite trips for the summer, to kick off the summer, is going to Maine, to Casco Bay. I'm working with a fantastic young man named Ben Wally. He's a fantastic fly tyer and an amazing guide. And it's most of what we're doing there is sight casting the striped bass in skinny water. And that's been a really cool program. We ended up finding an awesome house right on Casco Bay. The group of guides that Ben put together last summer, that we took a group of folks there for the first time, and everyone just had such a great time. It was fantastic. And, we had a couple tough days because of rain, but the hospitality end of things, and having a lobster boil, and, having everyone pile around the house in this old Victorian style house. I mean, it was just really awesome. And we're going back to do that again this next summer. Colorado, we have a trout program there on the Gunnison River, the Black Canyon. I'm also working with some friends that I met through the Los Locos guys in Puerto Rico. And we're doing a collaboration between No Name Lodge and Travel Creel. There's an amazing tarpon fishery in Puerto Rico, on the western side of Puerto Rico. And there's also some great opportunities for catching permit as well. So that's another awesome saltwater. And, Puerto Rico, the coolest thing is it's like you're going to a foreign country, but it's an American territory. You don't need to bring a passport. You don't even need to show a passport. So
oh, wow. Pretty easy.
That's pretty cool. I've been trying to work out some other tarpon opportunities in Florida, but right now it's turned into kind of like a like a buddies trip that we've done the last couple of years, and do a little bit of fishing in Homosassa and a little bit of fishing on the Panhandle with some guide friends and some other friends. And every year we kind of pile on some new friends and go down there and have some fun. But I'm going to turn that into a Travel Creel trip when I find the right house and the right place and all that stuff. It just hasn't all been dialed in yet.
Gotcha. How do you find the right house? Are you doing all this work on the back end, finding the houses and putting the trips and all that stuff?
Yeah. So there's a process to that. And it's the R&D portion is, fun, but it's also a lot of trial and error, and, meeting people and making connections and seeing how those connections help other connections. And, one thing turns into you talking to this person, and sometimes it's going to Airbnb and looking at a house. Sometimes it's finding a house on Airbnb and trying to figure out how to contact those people off Airbnb. And, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, finding the right house. I mean, that's a challenge right there, because you go to, a rental site and they say the house sleeps 8. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean there's 8 individual beds.
Yeah.
So you really have to look into it and make sure that you're looking at that stuff, because you're not going to show up at a house that has 4 beds and you show up with 4 dudes that don't want to sleep in the same bed.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Wow. Yeah, it is. It sounds like, and so you're setting these up and you have some connections just because you've guided, so you know some people. So essentially you go out there, you try to find a trip that maybe looks interesting to you, find the right guides, and then you put it together. Is that kind of how it looks?
yeah, it really comes down to finding a guide, one individual guide right off the bat who you trust and has a connection of other guides, and explaining to them what you want to do. And can you put a group of 3 other guys, because I run my trips with 8 people. So that's how we kind of keep it intimate and kind of keep that kind of family vibe going. Because there's 8 of us, 8 clients, me, and usually either a sous chef or someone to help me run kind of logistics on the front and run shuttles and stuff like that. So there's 10 of us in a house for a week. And first off, I want to make sure everyone's going to get along, and we all want to have a good time. So finding the right guide off the bat who can find other guides that we can do that program with, so it's putting 4 guides together, that's really crucial to the R&D process. And then there's the finding the house, which I explained already, and then there's the fun part for me as a chef, which is sourcing ingredients. And each individual place I go is a whole journey within itself of finding great produce, or finding a local chicken farmer, or finding a local beef producer. And every place I go, I've been like diving deeper every time I go into finding these great resources. So it's been a fantastic journey everywhere I go, not only the fishing and having great experiences and meeting people and creating relationships, but also, the relationships extend to the food part too for me. And recently in Colorado this year, like I mentioned, the guy with the chickens, I met a guy who was raising chickens, mountain chickens up in the hills, and these birds were amazing, and like creating a relationship with him was, and talking to him about what he does, and going to visiting him and seeing what he's doing, and buying birds directly from him, not going to the store and buying, a Purdue chicken in a plastic wrapper, kind of going back to the style of like what I grew up in. I grew up on Long Island, and my mom used to go buy chickens from the chicken farmer, and we would go to the fruit and vegetable and buy fruits and vegetables, not the supermarket. And we would go to the butcher shop and buy meats. We wouldn't be buying these styrofoam containers with plastic wrap over top of them. And as a chef, that's the kind of stuff I want to give people, because you talk about recipes and things like that. It all starts with the ingredients. And if you're able to source good ingredients, you don't need to do much to it in order to like make it delicious. Good ingredients speak for themselves. Then you just impart good techniques to those good ingredients, and you're going to create a delicious, wholesome, wonderful meal that people will love.
Sounds amazing. Wow. So yeah, and then you set these up, and then how does that look as you look out? Are you going to, because obviously you've got a limited number of trips, are you going to kind of mix these trips up over the years, or just bring on more folks? How are you going to keep kind of growing this thing?
So I've been scaling a little bit, and like the Fall River here in California is one of those playgrounds for me to practice my scaling. I have a couple young cooks, chefs who've been working with me for years. Austin's been with me for 15 years. He's been working with me at various places, and he showed me a desire to do some traveling and showed me his independence as being a chef. And we're working into him running this program, without me being here 100%. So I've been working on training other people to do the setup processes of different locations. And I would love to scale myself to the point where I can have multiple trips going on, as long as the clients understand that, I'm not going to be at every trip. I might poke my head in and say hi, but some of these trips will have, but these guys I'm bringing in as other chefs have awesome personalities too. And they're a lot of fun to be around. And I tell the guys that work with me all the time, like, the people around us are going to have fun if we're having fun. And I've worked for some high-end restaurants in my career and worked at some pretty high profile places. And those places have a lot of rules and, SOPs and standard, the operating, all this stuff is like very, almost corporate. And those rules take away from having fun. So I'm my own worst enemy there because I am so programmed to be like that. So I have to like use a lot of restraint of like, okay, I'm just going to let this fly because we're having fun and everything's might not be going the way I pictured it or imagined it. I don't have the rules in place to kind of push it in that direction, but everything's going well and people are having fun. And that's what it's about, is having fun. And if we're having fun as a crew, then everyone else around us is having fun too.
Right on. What's the, when you think about, I'm not sure the price point of these versus, say another lodge type experience, is this kind of a lower price point, or how do you kind of compete with the other folks, maybe just the typical lodge out there?
I try to keep my price points, affordable but the product that people are getting is a great product, and I try to keep it affordable at the same time. You have a private chef cooking for you. You're getting a great fishing experience. And, my initial year, I kept my prices under $4,000 for 5 nights accommodations and 4 days of fishing. And moving into 2024, I'm trying to keep under the $5,000 mark and still keep everything there. And the thing is I'm not looking at driving a Maserati and owning a mansion here. I just want to make people happy. And I want to keep the guys that work with me happy and take care of them and pay them well. I want to make sure my family's covered and that we're doing fine. But like, we're not living high on the horse because of this. It's
fly fishing.
Yeah, it's fly fishing. We're having fun. And like,
yeah.
My wife tells me all the time, I worked in restaurants my whole life. I worked at wineries for a long time in my life. And she's like, you'd be gone and you wouldn't be here, but you'd come back and you wouldn't be happy. She goes, but now, like, you're gone quite a bit. And I try to plan vacations with my kids a lot and get them to go places with me. And I plan things out so I get quality time with my kids. But my wife notices, she's like, you're spending quality time with us. And when you come home, you're happy all the time. So that makes a big difference in the family life.
Yeah, it does. And are you able to kind of take the kids out on some of these trips, like maybe before or after, or is this kind of just different?
Yeah, no, we've planned a few family vacations around these locations. So the last 2 years, my kids and my wife have been coming down to Baja with me, and in the springtime, and I have a friend who's got a house right on the beach, just north of Cabo San Lucas on the East Cape side. And we all hang out at the house and have a good time and go to the beach every day. And sometimes we ride the 4-wheelers around looking for roosterfish. And sometimes, my buddy Jeff has taken Asher, my oldest son, out, spearfishing before. And like, they're having these great experiences. Last year, Asher got to drive the Polaris around too, which was pretty cool for him.
Yeah.
So, my kids are having great experiences that, are brought about because of what I'm doing for a living now. And, my wife basically gave me an ultimatum when I first came up with this idea. She's like, I'm okay with you traveling and doing all this as long as we get to plan at least two locations a year that we get to go with you. And I've kept up with that. Like I'm planning on bringing my family to Puerto Rico for 2 weeks next year. And there's a lot of fun things for kids and families to do on that island. So we're, that's one vacation that we're looking forward to. And we're kind of bouncing back and forth on whether we're going to, go to Maine as a family this year, or whether we're going to segue a trip to New York, which is where I'm from. Or my sister lives in Italy, and I've been kind of looking into some travel fishing options in Europe right now. So there might be an opportunity to bring the family there and do some R&D while I'm there.
Yeah, there definitely is. We've done a few episodes in Europe and Italy in that area, and there's definitely some awesome opportunities.
Yeah, one of the best trout experiences I've had while going on vacation was outside of Florence, fishing the Seine River, and had like one of these dry fly experiences for brown trout and rainbows. That was so epic. And what made it epic is, it started raining and we went down the hill or up the hill to a little trattoria and ate prosciutto and drank wine and ate pasta while the rain was coming down until it let up. And then we went back down and just got more fish on dry flies. It was incredible.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. Dette Flies, established in 1928, is the oldest family-run fly shop in the world. And I'm all about the history in fly fishing, which is one reason I'm super stoked to have Dette on as a sponsor this year. Long before I made my first order with Dette, I remember hearing stories about the quality and the history and always wanting to connect deeper with them. So that time has come now, and I share the Dette tradition with you. Located in Livingston Manor on the banks of Willowwemoc Creek, Dette is your welcoming place on the creek or online. Their retail and online shop have a large selection of flies, materials, fly gear, outdoor lifestyle items, books, and more. Dette Flies inventory consists solely of products that meet every angler's demand for highest quality and service. Of course, they offer fly fishing and casting lessons as well as guided trips. For more information, visit Dette Flies at wetflyswing.com/Dette or give them a call, 845-439-1166. That's wetflyswing.com/Dette, Dette. You support this podcast by clicking over through that link to Dette. Okay, let's get back to the show. So what is that? Talk about, you got this Mexico trip coming up here. Talk about that one. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Where are you headed for this one again?
So San Carlos, which is Puerto San Carlos, which is the Pacific side of Baja. And it's about like halfway down the peninsula in a bay, Magdalena Bay. And that's working with my friends and their outfitter, the Los Locos Mag Bay team, which is George and Rudy started this company. They run pongas. You go offshore, and it's not your typical marlin fishing where you're running teasers behind the boat and trolling. You're actually actively finding marlin feeding on bait balls. And when you find a static bait ball, these fish are in there feeding, and you get a fly in there and you rip it out of there, and you're literally watching this marlin eat your fly pretty much in front of you. It's all very visual. Once that fly gets eaten, then the real work starts. We're talking about hooking fish, very many of them are over 100 pounds. Occasionally you get the 80 and 90 pounders, but there's a lot over 100 pounds up to 200 pounds. I've pulled my fly away from some fish that were just gigantic. I don't even want to fight that thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's an amazing experience there. And the cool part about San Carlos, like I'll dive into, like they're using a small local hotel to accommodate guests. And I've built some relationships with the owner of the hotel and the kitchen staff that work in the kitchen at the hotel. And I go in the kitchen and work amongst them and with them and put out meals, and I help them with what they're doing and they help me with what I'm doing. And it's not about going there and showing off. It's about going there and, the chef in that kitchen, like he's hungry to learn. And I'm more than happy to show him techniques and things that can help him, hone his craft and become a better chef. Last year when I was there, I also did a cooking class for some local local students and some housewives as well, and taught them a couple kind of Americanized recipes. I mean, I made macaroni and cheese, and when I thickened the milk with flour and butter and did all that, they thought I was some kind of wizard. And it was just kind of cool, and taught them how to make chocolate chip cookies, and told them next time I come back, I'll pay you to make chocolate chip cookies so I don't have to make them anymore, you know? So like fun little experiences like that. And then products down there, like when you drive to Puerto San Carlos, it's a 45-minute drive between this town called Constitution and Puerto San Carlos. And that stretch right there is one of the largest asparagus growing regions in the world. And I drove through there and I'm like, look at all that asparagus. Wow. And I would never see asparagus in the stores. And I would see all this asparagus. Like, how do I get my hands on this beautiful asparagus? And obviously it's all being picked and put in trucks and shipped over the border to the United States, you know, and I didn't see it in the store there. I mean, the only place I ever saw asparagus down there was in Walmart. And you think about it, it's an American-owned company in Mexico, so they're the only ones who are able to turn a truck around. But a gentleman I met down there, Crispin, who kind of is like an old-school whale-watching guide and fishing guide in that area, you know, he and I hung out quite a bit, and we went to go have lunch in Constitution one day. I had to run some errands, and I was asking him, how do I get that asparagus? He goes, we need to find the white truck because the white truck is the boss. I was like, all right. And we drove past. We didn't see any white trucks. So I'm like, all right. And we go into town. We have lunch. We're coming back. And he goes, there's the white truck. We like literally pulled off on a dirt road and drove down this road and chased down the white truck. Well, the white truck had a guy named Davey in it, and he owned all those asparagus fields.
Oh, wow.
And not only was he like open armed, like when we explained like why I was there as a chef and what I was doing, he's like, let's go pick some asparagus. We picked 2 bags of asparagus, and he's like, take a picture of me and here's my card. And you can come back here anytime you want and pick asparagus. And if anyone asks you like why you're here, just let them know that you know me, and it's fine. I was like blown away by that amount of hospitality he showed us in his field. And I served beautiful fresh asparagus to a group of anglers while I was down there, and they were blown away by it, because when you have asparagus that fresh, it's a different experience. Like if you've ever grown asparagus in your garden, it's sweeter when it doesn't spend time in a refrigerated truck being transported. Also, you know, asparagus makes your peas smell. It's a chemical change in the vegetable from being refrigerated and being held. But when you eat it fresh out of the field and never being refrigerated, it doesn't do that.
Oh, wow.
So you eat asparagus and you don't get that stinky pea.
Jeez. There's a bonus.
I guess, yeah.
God, that's great. Wow, this is also, I mean, it sounds like kind of the local food, the local connections is something, you know, you really enjoy. And it sounds like that's awesome. I mean, I could see this as you grow into it, right? And going into different parts. I mean, like the teaching, that sounds like just the local community. Do you enjoy that, connecting with the local communities out there?
Yeah, I think it's really important, especially for a trip like this, because, you know, George from Los Locos, you know, posed this to me, you know, and I agree with him. You know, me coming in as a chef into an area where, you know, it's not a high income area and it's not even a touristy area. San Carlos is a fishing town.
And is this near? I think I see it, San Carlos Nueva Guamas. Is it near a national reserve to the north?
No. So this is Puerto San Carlos.
Oh, right, gotcha.
Okay, so it's right in Magdalena Bay.
Oh, okay, yeah, gotcha.
And so it's a fishing village. I mean, it's still got dirt roads. The people are really simple. There's boats. You drive up and down the street, and there's people, you know, cleaning their shrimp nets every day. I mean, these are people that go out every day and go catch shrimp and you know, are catching bait, and you know, everything they're catching, they're selling and trying to make a living off of. It's not a high income area. There's only a couple restaurants in town, and you know, they depend on whoever comes through. And like here these guys are running an outfit there. They're bringing people to the town. They're creating some tourism. And the last thing they want to do is bring a chef in that's now taking away from them profiting from, bringing tourism to their area. So how do we do things that, give back to the community? So they're not looking at me as a chef coming in and being like, oh, who's this guy? He's like taking away all our work. So you have to find creative ways to intermingle with the community and find ways to give back and find ways to do things to help them and make them realize that you're not there to take from them. You're there to benefit them as well.
Right.
So, and that's a challenge of going there. And I'm only doing a couple weeks there.
So you do a couple trips. You got like 2 groups coming through or something like that?
Yeah, we have 2 groups that are doing the Travel Creel experience with the Los Locos team. And, I'm not looking at being down in Baja and that part of Baja full time. These guys have a 12-week program, and I'm honored to be part of 2 weeks of those 12 weeks.
Yeah, right. And that'll be, now it's kind of September going into October. After that, what's your next trip after that?
So my last trip of the year is to Cayo Francis to Ambridge's Cay in Belize. And Jeff Spiegel owns and operates the Cayo Francis Lodge, and it's a really cool experience. It's a DIY experience if you want it to be. You can also hire guides to take you out on pongas. It's all flats fishing for all the normal critters out there. There's tarpon, there's permit, there's bonefish, there's barracuda, and he's got the lodge set up with paddle boards. I first heard about this lodge through Matt Porbay, and Matt Porbay is who also runs the No Name Lodge in Puerto Rico I was talking about earlier. So Matt really kind of helped set this up, and these guys are all intermingled. Like George and Rudy from Los Locos introduced me to Matt. Like these are all people who all know each other through the saltwater fly fishing world. And, these are people that get, hospitality and understand it and wanted to talk to me about what I can do for their operations to help them up the level of their hospitality. And, Travel Creel is not about like going in and like making a bunch of money and like calling it a day. It's like about like helping people. I want to raise the bar, people ask me all the time, is there someone else out there doing it? But no, I'd love to have someone else out there do it. I'd love to have someone, in the restaurant industry, every restaurant's pushing on each other to do stuff better. And, I'd love to have, some other people doing this so we can all push on each other and maybe help each other and push each other to do things better and, push the level of hospitality up in the entire industry.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I think it's kind of funny because I think what we're doing is very similar. It's almost like we're our own competition here because we're setting up a similar program. Ours is a little different. We do like 3 days, 4 nights typically.
Okay.
And and we find like we said, Airbnb or like we go to lodge sometime and set something up. It's just kind of open. But our thing is we're trying to keep the price point lower.
Sure. Yep.
To allow people to get in and stuff like that. But it's the same thing. Yeah. I mean, the chef, we try to find a chef. We try to do it really as good as we can. But it's cool hearing from you because it sounds like you're, definitely at this high level of, the food and everything, so definitely, we'll have to keep in touch with you, pick your brain more. So how's it look as you look out on you mentioned, so you got Belize, that wraps up the year. And then you when do you start up your year?
So the year starts up again the second week of January, going to the Bahamas. So I did some R&D in the Bahamas last year, and we ended up, I traveled with a couple friends, and we just went to a couple different islands and a couple different lodges and kind of took it all in. And, I met a family, the Taylor family. They own Mount Pleasant Fishing Lodge in Andros Island. Really, really great people. Their father kind of was the matriarch of the family that ran the lodge, and he passed away a bunch of years ago. And his kids are trying to keep it going, and they're doing okay, but their business is falling off a little bit, and it's a beautiful property. It's got a DIY flat behind it, which is really unique. They're down a private road. The father was obviously pretty tight with Bahamian ministry of some type, because this is the only paved road in the area that leads to the lodge. And it's a cool building. It's a little dated, but it's kind of dated in a cool Bahamian way. It's got a really cool island feel. The family's got great hospitality, such sweet, kind people. And like Stacy, who runs the kitchen and does the food, like I proposed the idea of like, working with her in the kitchen and doing some different things. And she was like all about it. She's like, yeah, it sounds great. Like, everyone else I talked to in the Bahamas really kind of had their own program, and I get that. And I'm not looking at stepping on toes, and I'm not looking at changing people's programs. I was just looking for someone who wanted to work with me and bring some of my clients to the Bahamas to have an awesome bonefish experience. It just happens to be on the island where we had some epic bone fishing too. So, and Andros has a history of having a lot of bonefish, and it went through a little bit of a decline, but it's definitely coming back. We saw a lot of bonefish on the flats last year when we were there.
And this one will be like a DIY thing, or will there be guides there?
No, we have guides. We have 4 guides. I fished with 4 guides last year, and out of those 4 guides, 2 of them really stood out to me. I got along with, Eddie in particular. I really hung out with Eddie outside of just fishing with him. We did some fun stuff, going to the bar together, going and fishing for tarpon off the dock at night and hanging out with this guy. And he's just a great guy. He's got a heart of gold. And it's funny, when we were at the airport, we were waiting for our shuttle, and there's a tiny little bar there at Fresh Creek Airport. And we go in there, and the bartender's this awesome outgoing guy named Brandon Bowleg. And we're talking to him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a guide too." We're like, "Oh, really? Cool." And he's like, "You all set up?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I told him who I was going with. He's like, "Oh, that's my cousin," or "That's my," they're all somehow, intermingled and know each other. And as I was setting this up for next year, Brandon reached out to me, and he and I have had some just amazing conversations about what we can do and where we can take this. And I'm really looking forward to creating an awesome experience there. And I have the connections and the friends there now to really turn this into something special.
Right. Wow. That sounds cool. So that's that's Bahamas, and then keep us going on this. What do you got? What's up after the Bahamas?
So after the Bahamas is the Steelhead trip to Tillamook, Oregon.
And that'll be in what month?
That is the end of February, beginning of March.
Yeah, beginning of March. Okay.
Yeah, we chose those dates because that's really historically been when, the hatchery run's kind of dwindling out and the wild fish are starting to show up in good numbers. And, all the guides run rafts, and we're running, the Trask, the Wilson, the Nestucca. The Nehalem's a little far away, but it's possible. There's like 7 rivers in the area that are all great productive steelhead streams. And there's a lot of traffic out there, but everyone really gets along. And I guided steelhead in California, Northern California, on the coastal streams, and those streams have had lower runs of fish and more boat pressure. And when a client asked me if I was going to put a trip together on Northern California water, I'm like, I just can't see myself putting 4 boats out there and feeling good about it.
Yeah, because it's just not enough fish and already a lot of people.
Yeah, too much pressure. Like, there's just a lot of pressure out there.
Right, gotcha. And then you said Pacific City is where you have the house or the cabin.
We actually are switching houses this year. The last couple of years we've run out of a house right in Pacific City, a beautiful house, and that house went on the market and I was unable to rent it this year, and it kind of bummed me out because it's been such a great property for us to work out of. And I just kind of put some feelers out there and started doing some research and ended up finding this unbelievable property in Cloverdale, which just is like, 5 to 10 minutes north of Pacific City. And it's like close to the ocean, but like separated by like a nice forest. And there's a private trout lake that the house is on. There's actually 2 houses on the property with a private trout lake, and it has some rainbows in there up to 24 inches. I mean,
oh wow.
And so our plan is to drag a few of our boats up there and drop them in the water, so when you're done steelhead fishing for the day, you can go out and catch a couple trout.
There you go. Nice. All right. So and then was there another after steelhead? Do you have another trip there?
So after steelhead, is April. Actually in March, I also have a trip, my first trip to Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
So that's the first time I'm going to be going to Puerto Rico with the group. And that's No Name Lodge in Boca Raton, which is the west coast of Puerto Rico. And I have a group of guys that are really excited to be there. I just got those March dates, and these guys just signed up for it. So I was anticipating a little break, but it looks like that's what's happening at the end of March. And then April is kind of a little bit of downtime, some family time going on for me. And then May, we go right into going back to the East Cape and doing the roosterfish thing. And I'm working with Juan Lucero, and he's, a local guy, really awesome guide. His dad was a guide. He's a guide. His brother's a guide. His dad actually recently passed away, but his son, David, has just started guiding as well. So it feels really good to kind of, hire some local family and work with a local family of guides that are really dialed into ponga fishing for roosterfish. And then we have a house that we rented in La Ventana, and the owner of that house, his family's owned that house since La Ventana started being developed. It's one of the first houses that were built on the ocean, and Juan's became a great connection as well. There's two Juans. There's Juan, the house owner, and then there's Juan Lucero, who's the guide, and Java, as we call him. That Juan, he's fantastic. His family's from La Paz, and he's got a lot of connections, and he's been a great person to get to know as well. And the house is amazing. I mean, it's like kind of like a little mini mansion with a big like infinity pool out front and stuff. It's right on the ocean. It's pretty sick. I mean, it's old school, kind of stylish Mexico, but what else do you want? You're in Baja.
Right. Yeah, that's what you want.
It's perfect.
Wow. And so all these trips, it sounds like, I mean, you've done all these trips now. I mean, is there one, that you kind of, have you guided for some of these species, all of these species?
I mean, not really. And that's never been a goal of mine. My idea is to go to some place and use the people that know the water the best.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to come in and guide some water that I don't know. And I'm not, my whole goal of being there is offering hospitality. Yeah. And kind of cracking the code on how to give the guests the best experience there. So, the more I do these trips, the more, I have guys that I bring along with me to help me out. And the more they learn, the more it frees me up to get out there and explore more and kind of find ways to kind of make things even better. So that's been the process for me. And, it's been so much fun building this business up. I mean, I haven't had a single day where I'm just like, this is boring, or I even felt like I was working, honestly.
Right. And what is as you look out over, just kind of further out, are you going to keep expanding into more trips in the South America? Do you have ideas, or are you just kind of taking it one at a time?
I love, like, the rabbit hole of saltwater has dragged me in so far as a fisherman goes and angling. Like, I love fishing the salt. I love fishing flats. I love fishing offshore. I love doing inshore stuff. I mean, I love it all. And, for me, coming from the freshwater side of things and being, a freshwater guide, and my connections were all in trout and steelhead and, even bass fishing, doing some fly fishing for bass. My clientele is from there too. So filling trout trips and steelhead trips has been pretty easy for me. And now, like, the biggest part for me is being able to kind of get my net wider in the saltwater game. Those have been the harder trips for me to fill, but like, it's more about getting some of my anglers that are with me and my clients that, maybe have never done saltwater. Like, let's get them into a saltwater experience so we can kind of build them up to do more saltwater stuff. So I'm not looking at growing super fast. Like, I'm all about taking baby steps and not rushing things. Finding new locations is great. When we find a new location, we're not putting 2 or 3 weeks on the calendar. We're putting 1 week, and we're going there with one group, and we're paying attention to that one group and that 1 week. And maybe we're staying a few extra days on the front end and the back end and doing some explorations and finding new things and seeing how it would work to expand it if we get to that point. So,
right.
I'm not looking at growing too fast, man. I've worked for too many places that did that. And it's just, that's when you start not having fun. If you're not having fun, it's not worth doing it.
Right. That's a great advice for sure. Yeah, man. It sounds like you got a great program. I mean, the places, everything you've talked about, from Baja. I mean, all these sound amazing. Even the stuff up in Maine too, right? I mean, there's all sorts of great. Yeah, and then in your home base, like you said, is California, which has its own. I think there's more. Yeah, there's more waterways in California than any other place. It's just got tons of resources.
Yeah, the Fall River is kind of what we got going on here for Travel Creel, and I just kind of lucked into having this lodge on the upper end of the river, like working with the owner of this lodge, and it's great. I got some friends that I worked at another lodge up here years ago, and we all kind of went our separate directions, and they've become independent guides now and not working for outfitters, and we had an opportunity to kind of get the band back together and do a small operation. We're running 4 boats up here. Again, it's 8 people. We have access to this lodge. We're the only ones using this lodge, and it works perfect for our pop-up situation. And, the trout fishing up here is great. We have a little spring program, and, beginning of the spring, the dry fly fishing is great. And, by the time the summer heat kicks up, we kind of take a break. And then, it's September now. It's starting to cool off. The fish are starting to feed a little bit more again. And we're back again doing, the fall program now.
Right.
So,
right. This is great.
And I don't think I mentioned that did I mention the next spot I'm going to after here is Louisiana?
Oh, no. Yeah. You missed that one.
Yeah. So I kind of skipped over it. So I'm headed to New Orleans on Sunday, and I have 2 groups coming down. And that's the original spot. Like when I was first working with an outfitter, that's where I went and got to go fish for free and cook for everyone. And my thought of being in New Orleans is you're in New Orleans. There's so much culture, so much awesome stuff to do. And, the program that we ran there, not my program, I was just part of it. And we stayed out in the bayou, and there's not much to do. Like, you'd go out in the backyard and try to catch the alligator gar in the little pond back there.
Nice.
And stare at the 4 walls and watch football and stuff. And to me, the lodge was a little hokey. It wasn't like really what I was looking for comfort. Having clients sleep in kids' bunk beds really wasn't what I was aiming to do. And the kitchen wasn't really set up, and wasn't really the kind of kitchen I want to be cooking out of. I'm not trying to be snobby or anything, but I hate cooking on electric coil burners, and that's kind of what it was. And my plan for New Orleans was different. Like, let's go at a different time of year where it's a little bit warmer, renting a house on the outskirts of New Orleans. And I found a great house. The owner's awesome. Her and I have been talking about it. They just renovated the house. It's really nice. It's got an outdoor area that we can hang out in. As long as we have good weather, we're going to be able to hang out outside on the deck, on the roof. And then, we're going to get back to the house pretty early. You get off the water early there, have a nice early dinner. And then who wants to go out and go see some live jazz? And who wants to go out, and check out, the Crazies down in Bourbon Street, And, I'm not really worried about, like, my clientele that's coming along with me. They're chill people. I'm not worried about people disappearing into the night and coming back covered in Mardi Gras beads or not coming back at all. So, and the last 5 years, I've done a lot of exploring in the city, and there's a lot of really cool things that I think I'm going to be able to turn people onto that I found down there. So,
and this is a redfish?
Yeah, so it's redfish, black drum, of course, are in the mix, and then there's the convicts, which are the sheep's head.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of like, the bayou permit. So,
sure.
And, my buddies who turned me on to that fishing, like, I super appreciate it. And I wanted to turn it into kind of the Travel Creel program. And, this is the first time that I'm down there running it this way. And I got a great group of clients coming with me, and they're all fired up about it. It's going to be fun.
Wow. Nice, man. Well, it sounds like you got a good year ahead of you. Anything else you want to give a shout out before we hop out of here today on kind of the program you have going or anything around Travel Creel?
No, I just encourage people who want to do some travel and explore and enjoy good food and enjoy good company to check out the website and, cruise through there. There's a destination page that you can look at all the destinations. There's also a trip calendar page, so you can look at what we have coming up, what we have booked, and how many spots are left. And then from there, you just click on, the book now button, and it takes you to an email. And that's really how the booking process starts with us, because we like to keep it personalized and have conversations with people. We don't just say, okay, you can go on there and purchase your ticket to the trip. It's let's talk, and let's talk about skill levels, and let's talk about what you like and what you don't like and all that kind of stuff. And let's make sure that we're finding the right trip that fits you.
Right. Cool, man. Well, this is good, Josh. We'll definitely, like you said, we'll send everybody out to travelcreel.com if they want to check out some of these trips. And definitely, I would love to stay in touch with you because, like I said, we've got our own kind of program going, but I'm always looking for other options. You know, salt is one of those places where I think, you know, we haven't done much of. So there might be some opportunities to get some people your way for that as well. So yeah, man, thanks for all the time today. And until we talk again, we'll catch you there at the Travel Creel.
Absolutely, Dave. It was great talking to you, and thanks for having me on the show, man.
That is a wrap. You can grab all of the show notes at wetflyswing.com. And please follow us on Instagram and share this episode out with someone you love. Please send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you have any feedback or want us to put together an episode on this podcast for you. Check in anytime. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and would love to meet up with you on the water. We have new fly fishing schools going all year long and all around the country. So if you want to connect, let's do it right now. All right, time to get out of here. I hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon wherever in the world you are. And I appreciate you for stopping by and checking out the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.